This is R2D Tech, and today we're going to be talking about the future of Macs following a huge announcement that Apple made just a few days ago in WWDC, so stay tuned. So as you probably know, all Macs have been using Intel processors for the last few years, but the major announcement that Apple just made is that they're going to be transitioning away from these Intel processors and to their very own chipsets, which is very exciting. The idea is that Apple are going to be using their own SoCs, or systems on a chip, in future MacBooks over the next 2 years. And what this means is it's going to take all the components which you normally find in a computer, like the CPU, GPU, and RAM, and miniaturize it and put it all onto one piece of silicone. We've seen this before in the iPhone and iPad along with the Apple Watch, but also we saw this in WWDC, where Apple were demonstrating the first Mac Pro to run with this SoC, which was called the A12Z. Now, the good thing about Apple using their own chipsets on future MacBooks is that they're so much more power efficient than things like Intel processors combined with other GPUs. It's because Apple's chipsets are made to work with the Apple software that they can make it so efficient. And that means that, like we saw on the iPad, you can have not that much RAM and not crazy specs, but it can run so much better than other laptops or other combinations which seem to have way better specs on paper. Like we saw with the iPad Pros, you can edit 4K video with no delay on apps like LumaFusion, and it seems to operate so much better than even some of the MacBooks which run hardcore Intel processors. One thing you might have noticed is that devices like the iPad Pro don't actually have any fans. In fact, they run completely silently, and yet they can run full-on 4K video editing softwares, and also they can run apps like Adobe Photoshop, which lots of other computers and lots of other Macs actually struggle to run with active cooling. It's not just speed though, there's many other advantages that come with Apple using their own SoCs on future MacBooks, and those include much better camera and audio processing, much better power management, the ability to use Apple's neural engine, and finally, and maybe even most importantly, is that much better security that you get with Apple's chipsets, because it's actually built into the hardware along with the software. Now, you're probably wondering whether all the apps which are made for Intel-based Macs will be able to work on these new Macs. And one thing's for sure, Apple have already made all of their apps compatible with the new Macs. So things like Final Cut Pro will already work on these new ARM-based Macs. They've also partnered with many other developers like Adobe to make sure that all of their apps are already compatible with the new ARM-based Macs. Probably one of the funniest parts of Apple's WWDC keynote was watching Craig Federighi try and show off the power of these new Macs by running Microsoft Office Word.
Is just super responsive. Next, let's check out Excel.
The takeaway though from this is that Microsoft and Apple have already partnered to make sure that the Microsoft apps will be compatible on the new ARM-based Macs, which is also really useful. And we did see a live demo of Adobe apps working on the new ARM-based Macs as well. Now, in terms of apps being able to run on both Intel-based Macs and ARM-based Macs, since there will be more Intel-based Macs coming out in the future, according to Apple, there is something which you can access through Xcode called Universal 2, which will allow developers to essentially have two different coded versions of the same app, so it will be compatible with both Intel-based Macs and ARM-based Macs, so you won't have to worry about that. The other really important announcement was something called Rosetta 2, because if you're wondering if all the other apps will be compatible with these ARM-based Macs, this is the thing to make that possible. So as you download any Intel-based apps, Rosetta 2 will actually translate the code into being compatible with the new ARM-based Macs. So yes, you will actually be able to run almost any app that you could run before on these new ARM-based Macs, and this will only improve in the future. Now, one last thing which I thought was really cool is actually that since the iPhone, iPad, and these new Macs will all be running Apple's SoCs under the same framework, that means that iPhone and iPad apps will be compatible on this new Mac. So you'll be able to play all the games which you could previously play on the iPad, for example, on your Mac as well, which is really cool. But also, if it can run the other way around as well, that will be insane. So if you can run Mac apps on the iPad, that will allow me to run lots of specialized apps like CAD softwares or some video editing softwares like Final Cut Pro, which I couldn't previously access on the iPad now, or even the iPhone. And that will unlock a complete ecosystem which will be way better than any other ecosystem, including Samsung's. Of course though, I'm not saying that other companies aren't also giving this a try. I know that Microsoft have been doing it with one of their products, but also Samsung have actually been making Exynos chips for ages. They just haven't been running on all of their phones. Although we are talking about Apple here, who in my opinion already have the most complete ecosystem. And with this new cross-compatibility, it could become a whole next level thing. If you can run apps from your Mac on your iPad or vice versa, who knows what Apple are actually trying to do? Maybe the iPad will eventually become the Mac.
I'm using a tablet as a computer. What am I? Stupid?
Maybe they'll get rid of the Mac altogether and just keep the iPad. I wouldn't be too far against that, since they are giving the iPad lots of cool features now, like full mouse compatibility and really nice software upgrades. The point is that with this new move from Apple, there's a lot of possibilities being opened up, and I'm really excited for that future, especially with things like Apple's AR glasses coming out in a few years. If you haven't seen that video, then definitely check it out. It's on the channel and it's actually pretty interesting. Other than that, I think that's it for this week. I probably will be making a video next week on all of Mac OS Big Sur's new features, and you should definitely stay around for that. But if you did like this video, then please leave a thumbs up, and if you really liked it and you want to see more content like this in the future, then maybe hit the subscribe button and notification bell below.